It was a typical Thanksgiving dinner at my family's house. The kitchen smelled of turkey and stuffing, and the table was covered with all the traditional sides: mashed potatoes, cranberry sauce, pumpkin pie. My relatives gathered around, talking about their lives, laughing over old jokes, and reminiscing about past holidays. Everyone was in their usual holiday spirits, or so it seemed. But little did they know, I was hiding a massive secret that would change everything. A few months earlier, I had come into a fortune, $12 million to be precise. It had been a result of a long, hard journey, a mix of smart investments and a bit of luck. I had always been cautious about money, keeping a low profile and never flaunting wealth. I wasn't interested in the flashy lifestyle that some people craved. But this time, things were different. My life had taken a turn, and I didn't know how to share it with my family. As I sat down at the table, I couldn't help but feel a slight knot in my stomach. It was Thanksgiving, and I was supposed to be grateful for the love and togetherness we had. But the secret weighed on me. What if they found out? What if they asked questions? I didn't want to stir things up or deal with the endless demands that could follow. I just wanted a peaceful evening. But life, it seemed, had other plans. The evening was progressing smoothly, with everyone enjoying the food and the familiar chatter that filled the air. My mother was telling one of her long-winded stories about a family trip from years ago, and my cousin was cracking jokes that had everyone laughing. For a moment, I allowed myself to relax, focusing on the warmth of the room and the comfort of being with family. But deep down, I couldn't escape the anxiety of the secret I was hiding. Then, as I reached for another serving of mashed potatoes, my phone buzzed. It was a message from my accountant, an update about some recent investments. The notification flashed across the screen, and in that moment my sister, who was sitting next to me, leaned in closer to see what it was. "Is that your bank balance?" she asked, her voice not quite a whisper. I froze for a second, panic rising. I hadn't meant for anyone to find out this way, especially not her. I quickly tried to swipe the phone away, but she was already too quick. Her eyes widened as she read the number on the screen: $12 million. Her face morphed from curiosity to complete disbelief. "Wait, you have $12 million?" she exclaimed, her voice louder than I wanted it to be. The room went silent. My mother's head turned in our direction, and then the rest of the family followed suit, looking at me with a mix of confusion and curiosity. My sister didn't seem to realize the magnitude of what she had just revealed to everyone. I had hoped to keep it quiet, but now it was too late. I could feel all eyes on me, the weight of their stares making the air thick with expectation. I forced a smile, trying to play it cool, but inside I was panicking. How did I explain this? How could I explain a fortune that had come into my life out of nowhere? And why was I so reluctant to share it with them? The questions started immediately, and I could already hear the underlying greed in their tone. But there was no going back now. The truth was out, and Thanksgiving had just taken a very unexpected turn. The room was silent for a moment, like everyone was still processing the words that had just been said. My sister's eyes were wide, and she seemed to be waiting for me to confirm or deny the unbelievable statement. Slowly, I nodded, the weight of the moment pressing down on me. "Yes, I have $12 million, I said quietly, trying to keep my voice steady. At first, no one moved. Then the questions began, coming fast and furious. "How did you get this money?" my cousin asked, leaning forward with a look of disbelief. "Are you sure? That's insane." My mother, ever the worrier, added, "What do you mean $12 million? Where did this come from? Why didn't you tell us?" Her voice trembled slightly, a mix of surprise and concern. I could see the wheels turning in her head, trying to understand what this meant for me, and for the family. Before I could respond, my brother chimed in. "Wait, if you've got $12 million, does that mean you can help me out with my business idea? I've been thinking about starting that tech company, and you could totally invest in it." His tone wasn't one of excitement or genuine curiosity, but more like he saw the money as something he could tap into. It hit me like a slap in the face. Their immediate reaction wasn't to celebrate my success or ask how I had managed to achieve such an incredible milestone. It was to immediately think about what they could get from it. The subtle shift in their tone and expressions was like a light switch going off. Suddenly, I wasn't the person they had known. I was now just a bank. My dad, who had remained quiet up until this point, cleared his throat and said, "So, what are you planning to do with it all? Are you going to keep it? Or are you thinking of sharing some of it?" His eyes were fixed on me, and I could almost see the mental calculations happening in his head. I tried to keep calm, but inside, I was starting to feel suffocated. My family's questions were becoming more invasive, more entitled. It was as if they saw me not as a person, but as a source of wealth. I didn't know how to respond, so I stayed quiet for a moment, gathering my thoughts. This wasn't how I imagined my Thanksgiving going. I had thought we'd just enjoy each other's company, eat a nice meal, and share some laughter. But now everything had changed. My family wasn't asking how I felt, or how I'd come to this point. They were asking what they could get. The questions continued to come in waves, each one feeling like a heavy blow. My brother's request for money to start his business was followed by my aunt suggesting that I could help her buy a new house. She casually mentioned how her current place was getting too small for her growing family and how a little financial help from me could make a huge difference. The more they talked, the more I felt like a machine to be used, not a person to be understood. I was no longer their relative. I was the one holding the golden ticket, and they all wanted a piece of it. My cousin, who had always been close to me, added, I've been struggling a lot lately with some debts. If you could just lend me some money, I'll pay you back as soon as I can. It would make all the difference." His tone was so casual, like he was asking for a small favor, when in reality, it felt like an obligation that he was trying to place on me. I looked around the table, my heart sinking as more and more people started making their requests, or, in reality, demands. My mother was talking about how she could use some help with medical bills. My father, in his own quiet way, started mentioning how their retirement fund wasn't enough and how things were getting tight. I felt cornered. It wasn't just the money they were after. It was the way they had suddenly started looking at me. It was as if they were no longer seeing me as their daughter, sister, or cousin. They saw me as a means to solve their problems. I opened my mouth to say something, but I didn't know where to start. Part of me wanted to scream and tell them to stop, to ask why they couldn't just be happy for me without trying to take something in return. But the other part of me feared the consequences. I didn't want to cause a rift in the family, especially over something as sensitive as money. The pressure was building. They weren't asking out of genuine care. They were asking because they felt entitled to it. After all, we were family, right? But at that moment, I realized something crucial. Family shouldn't be about obligation. It should be about support, love, and respect. Yet here I was feeling used and drained. My thoughts were interrupted when my sister turned to me, her eyes now sparkling with a new kind of hope. "Come on, you've got to help us. You're the one with all this money now. It's only fair." Her words hung in the air like a heavy weight. There was no more pretense, no more niceties. It was clear that they didn't care about the journey I had taken to get here. They just saw dollar signs that I couldn't take it anymore. The constant barrage of demands, the looks that spoke volumes. It was like I was suffocating in my own family's expectations. The room had grown tense, and with each passing second, I felt my frustration bubbling to the surface. My mind was racing, trying to find the right words, but all I could feel was the anger and hurt that had been building up since the moment my sister let the secret slip. Finally, I stood up abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor as I pushed it back. The sound was sharp and unexpected, drawing the attention of every single person in the room. "Enough!" I shouted, my voice louder than I had intended. The room fell into silence, everyone looking at me as if I had just thrown a bomb into the conversation. My heart was racing, but I knew I had to say what had been on my mind. I couldn't keep pretending like everything was okay. "This isn't about money," I continued, my voice trembling but firm. "This is about respect. I didn't come into this money to be your personal bank. I didn't work hard, make sacrifices, and put in the hours just so I could be the one to bail everyone out of their problems." I could feel the weight of their stares, the shock on their faces. They weren't expecting this. They were expecting gratitude, maybe even excitement from me. But not this. "I know you all think this money changes things," I said, my voice growing steady. "But it doesn't. What matters is the way we treat each other. I am not obligated to fix all of your problems. I'm not here to solve everything for you." The tension in the room was palpable. My mother looked hurt, her face creased with concern, but there was also a sense of realization behind her eyes. My father, ever the mediator, tried to speak, but I held up my hand to stop him. "I get it," I said, trying to calm myself. "I understand that you're all struggling, but I didn't expect to come here, on Thanksgiving of all days, and be asked for money. I wanted to be with my family, to feel supported, not used. This is not how I wanted to spend this day." For a long moment, no one said anything. The room was eerily quiet, and I could hear the faint sound of a clock ticking in the background, adding to the discomfort. I took a deep breath and sat back down, suddenly exhausted from the emotional outburst. My sister, who had started this whole mess, sat in stunned silence. She looked ashamed, and I could see the realization dawning on her that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't all about her getting what she wanted. The entire room had shifted. The casual holiday dinner had transformed into something much heavier, more complicated. I looked around at my family, and in that moment, I realized that they didn't really understand me, or what I had been through to get here. They didn't see the late nights, the failures, the sacrifices. They only saw the money. The tension in the room didn't dissipate immediately. If anything, it only grew thicker as I sat back down at the table, my heart still racing, my breath shallow. Everyone seemed too stunned to speak, and for the first time that night, I began to feel a strange kind of loneliness in the air. It was like I was sitting in a room full of strangers, not my family. My mother was the first to break the silence. Her voice was soft, almost apologetic. "We didn't mean to make you feel this way, honey. We're just so proud of you," she said, but there was an undertone of guilt in her words. I could tell she was struggling to reconcile the daughter she had always known with the one who had suddenly become someone with wealth beyond their wildest dreams. My father, who had always been the peacemaker, attempted to smooth things over. "Look, it's been a tough year for all of us," he said, trying to downplay the tension. "We just want to make sure the family stays united. That's all." But their words felt hollow now. The damage had been done. They could apologize all they wanted, but I couldn't ignore the way they had treated me in those moments. It wasn't just about asking for money. It was the way they had shifted their entire perception of me the second they learned about my fortune. Suddenly, I wasn't a daughter, a sister, or a cousin. I was a bank. My brother, who had been quiet up until then, suddenly spoke up. "I didn't mean it like that, okay? I just thought if you had it, you could help out. I'm trying to build something here. I could really use a hand." The way he said it stung. It wasn't just a request anymore. It was an expectation. And I realized in that moment that my family wasn't just looking for help. They were looking for a free ride. I felt a sharp pang of disappointment in my chest. I had always believed that family was supposed to be about more than just what you could give or receive. But now, it seemed like the only thing that mattered to them was money. The rest of the night passed in an uncomfortable haze. My cousins, who had previously been joking and laughing with me, now seemed distant. They barely made eye contact, and when they did, there was a sense of awkwardness in their gaze. My aunt, who had been the first to mention buying a house, now kept to herself, sipping her wine quietly, her earlier enthusiasm gone. I had expected some discomfort, yes. But not this. I hadn't anticipated that sharing a part of my life that was so personal would lead to this kind of distance. The worst part was that I could see it in their eyes. They didn't care about me anymore. They cared about what I could do for them. As the evening wore on, the conversations grew more strained. People started leaving earlier than usual, and the once lively Thanksgiving dinner had turned into a series of awkward goodbyes. It was a far cry from the warm, festive night I had hoped for. By the end of the night, I was left alone in the living room with just the sound of the clock ticking in the background. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had lost something important, something irreplaceable. My family had changed, and not in a way I could have ever imagined. The days following Thanksgiving were a blur. I tried to put the events behind me, but it was impossible. Every time I saw a message or a missed call from one of my family members, a wave of dread washed over me. It seemed like every conversation, every attempt to reconnect, had something to do with money. It was clear now that the dynamic had shifted, and not in a way I had ever anticipated. My sister, who had been the catalyst for all this, reached out first. I could hear the tension in her voice when she called me. "I'm sorry," she said. "I didn't mean to make everything so awkward. I didn't realize how much it would change things." Her words felt genuine, but the underlying regret wasn't about her actions. It was about how things had spiraled out of control. But there was something about her apology that didn't sit right with me. It wasn't the fact that she was sorry, but the fact that it seemed like she was apologizing for how I had reacted, not for what they had done. I was still processing everything, still struggling to find the right words to express how much it hurt to feel like I was being used. Then came my brother. He sent me a message, asking if we could talk things through and clear the air. His tone wasn't apologetic. It was more like he was trying to fix the situation for his own benefit, to make sure I wasn't holding any grudges that could affect his chances of getting something from me. I ignored the message for the day, needing time to think. What had happened to us? What had happened to the family I had always known, the one that had celebrated Thanksgiving with genuine joy? I kept going over the events of that evening in my head, replaying the looks, the words, and the demands. In the process, I realized something crucial. I had been naive. I had spent my life believing that family bonds were unbreakable, that love and support were the foundation of everything. But in that moment, I saw how easily those bonds could fray when money was involved. And the worst part was that I had allowed myself to be dragged into it, to be a part of this toxic dynamic. I finally decided to call a family meeting, just the immediate members, not the extended relatives. I needed to set boundaries, to make it clear that I wasn't going to let my fortune dictate my relationships. When we gathered at my house, the atmosphere was different. Everyone was a little more reserved, a little more cautious. They could sense the shift in me, and I could feel it too. I took a deep breath before speaking, determined to make my point clear. I don't want to be your ATM, I started, my voice steady. I'm not here to solve your problems with my money. I'm here because I love you, but I need to know that you love me for who I am, not for what I can give you. The room was silent, but I could see the wheels turning in their minds. For the first time, they were hearing me, really hearing me. I want to support you, I continued. But not like this. Not at the cost of my own well-being. If we're going to move forward as a family, we need to be honest and respectful of each other's boundaries. There was a long pause, but eventually my mother spoke. We've been selfish, she admitted, her voice cracking. I'm sorry. You're right. We've been so focused on the money, we've forgotten what really matters. For the first time in days, I felt like a weight had been lifted. It wasn't a perfect resolution, but it was a start. The conversation that followed was tough, emotional, and long overdue. There were tears, apologies, and uncomfortable truths. But in the end, it felt like we were all finally on the same page. Things didn't go back to normal overnight, and I knew there would be challenges ahead. But that Thanksgiving had taught me an important lesson. That money, no matter how much of it you have, should never come between love, respect, and family. And as I looked around at my family that day, I realized that they weren't just the people who shared my blood. They were the ones who needed to learn that the real wealth in life is found in relationships, not in bank balances.